There are places in the soul that remember things the mind has long forgotten. Places that dream in symbols where light and sound become language, and every heartbeat writes another line of code. We call them memories, but what if memory isn't what you think it is? What if it's not stored in the brain, but in the spirit? A living record, encrypted deep within the architecture of who you are. The prophet said, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Not imagined you, not hoped for you, knew you." That means your existence was written before your birth, before the world, before even light answered its first command. You were a design in the architect's mind. Every frequency in your being, every memory, every longing is part of a code too divine for machines to imitate and too dangerous for hell to leave untouched. Because if you ever remembered who you were before fear rewrote you, the system would collapse. That's why the war didn't start with weapons, it started with memory. Because memory holds identity, and identity determines authority. This is the story of the code you were born with. The one the enemy tried to edit, the one heaven still calls by name. Welcome to the Architect's Code. There are places in you that no one has ever seen, not even you. They don't live in your mind or your heart, but in a kind of architecture beneath them both, where light becomes memory and memory becomes identity. That's where the soul lives, not as a ghost inside flesh, but as a pattern, a divine code written in the language of eternity. Every joy you've known, every wound you've survived, every word spoken over you, they left lines in that code, some bright, some fractured, but all alive. The ancients understood this long before psychology gave it names. They said the soul remembers not only its own pain, but the echoes of those who came before. A whisper passed down through generations, woven into blood, sealed in spirit. And that's why some people carry storms they never caused. They inherit them. Spiritual programs written by unseen architects. Because every sin, every vow, every unhealed scar writes data into the soul's design. But there's something else, something that doesn't fit the darkness. When God breathes into dust, He doesn't just give it life, He gives it record. Every breath of the Spirit writes order into chaos. Every spark of divine light reprograms what hell corrupted. That's why redemption feels like remembering who you were before the world told you otherwise. Because when light enters the code, the soul begins to recognize itself again. That's when healing starts, not when pain disappears, but when truth starts to rewrite the story. So if you've ever felt like you are haunted by memories that aren't yours, or if you've ever sensed that your reactions are older than your lifetime, you're not crazy. You're remembering the architecture. The soul isn't just an idea. It's the blueprint of your eternity. And heaven has been trying to restore the original design. They say every life tells a story. But what if some stories were never meant to be written by human hands? Every soul carries a pattern, a design language written by the one who formed it. It's not random, it's deliberate, encoded before birth. But somewhere between Eden and now, something learned how to edit it. The ancients understood this better than we do. They called it the shaping, when unseen forces would mark a man's destiny through vows, bloodlines, or trauma. Each experience, a stroke of code. Each lie believed, another rewrite. That's why some people live lives that feel programmed. The same pain repeating in different faces, the same failure arriving on schedule, the same emptiness, like someone else has been writing in their script, and they have. Because there are architects, not of buildings, but of identity. They don't build cities, they build strongholds, invisible blueprints in the soul, constructed through wounds, habits, and hidden agreements. Every betrayal whispers, "You're unworthy." Every abuse adds a line of fear. Every moment of shame carves another line of permission, until the original code, the one heaven wrote, is buried beneath the counterfeit. It's not that people lose themselves, it's that something else occupies the space where truth was supposed to live. But there's a reason darkness mimics design. Because even the enemy knows the soul is technology, divine, precise, reactive. And if it can be altered, it can also be restored. That's why repentance isn't just emotion, it's a software reset. Deliverance isn't theatrics, it's deprogramming. And faith is the firewall. Because once you understand the architecture of your soul, you stop living as a hostage to the code that lied to you. You stop reacting and start rebuilding. You see, every stronghold started as a sentence. Every curse began as an agreement. Every spiritual prison was first a whisper. This is who you are. But God never said that. So when His voice cuts through, it doesn't just comfort. It reprograms. It restores. It overwrites everything hell tried to name you. And that's when the real war begins. Between the old architecture and the original design. Because heaven's architect doesn't just repair foundations. He rewrites blueprints. And when He does, the counterfeit system collapses. Every soul sings. You may not hear it, but heaven does, and so does hell. It's not a metaphor. It's a resonance. A frequency of identity that was woven into your being before you ever had a name. When God spoke you into existence, His voice left an imprint, a signature that vibrates through every breath you take. It's how angels recognize you. It's how creation knows who commands it. It's how demons remember who they lost. But when sin entered the world, so did distortion. Like static corrupting a perfect melody. Every lie believed, every wound buried, every word cursed. It all bends the frequency until the soul starts echoing notes that were never written for it. And the enemy listens for that, because hell isn't creative, it's parasitic. It can't make new music. It can only twist what already exists. So when a person's signature grows faint, when trauma drowns out truth, darkness tunes itself to the new sound, and suddenly it knows how to find them. That's why spiritual warfare is more than words. It's resonance. When you worship, your frequency aligns again. When you repent, distortion falls away. When you speak truth, the atmosphere adjusts, and heaven hears home again. I've seen deliverance that looked nothing like shouting, no lights, no noise. Just a quiet moment where a person finally believed what God said about them. And in that instant, something in the air shifted. The room felt tuned, like a note that had been missing for years was suddenly restored. Because that's what the enemy fears most, not a loud believer, but a resonant one. Someone whose soul hums the frequency of the throne. Even creation responds. You can feel it in worship, when a moment becomes holy without warning, when tears fall for no reason. That's alignment. The original design recognizing its signature again. Heaven's language isn't spoken, it's sung through obedience. And every act of faith strikes a chord that shakes both realms. The prophets called it the song of the redeemed. Scientists might call it vibration. But the truth is deeper. It's identity made audible. And that's why redemption is so powerful. It doesn't just cleanse the past, it restores the sound. It rewrites the soul's frequency until it sings in harmony with the one who created it. You were never meant to live muted. You were meant to echo eternity. Because when heaven hears its own reflection in you, the counterfeit can no longer claim your name. And that's when your true sound returns, not just to you, but to everything that ever listened for you in the dark. The sanctuary was empty. Only the hum of the lights remained. A low, tired whisper against the stone walls. She came every night now. Not for prayer, not for peace, but because something in the silence kept calling her back. There was a note, a single pitch, that only her soul could hear. It trembled in her bones, soft as memory, sharp as grief. And every time she closed her eyes, she felt it searching for her, like a code trying to find its missing line. She stood beneath the old wooden cross. The air felt heavy, alive. Her heartbeat began to sync with something ancient, a rhythm older than pain, older than fear. The sound deepened. It wasn't music, it was recognition. Light began to ripple through the air. Faint at first, like threads awakening in invisible hands. They wove themselves around her, strands of gold and blue moving in perfect time with her breath. And then she understood. It wasn't coming from outside. The sound was her, the original code, uncorrupted, unstolen, still alive beneath every wound. Tears fell, not from sorrow, but from alignment Because for the first time her soul remembered its song, and somewhere beyond the veil, heaven answered. There comes a moment in every deliverance where sound ceases and silence becomes the teacher, because sometimes the soul doesn't need another war, it needs alignment. We often imagine victory as loud, chains shattering, voices crying out, thunder breaking the sky. But heaven's greatest victories often begin in whispers, when a heart finally stops repeating what hell wrote into its code and starts remembering what heaven said first. It's the recalibration. It's when identity stops being reaction and starts becoming revelation. When the frequency of your thoughts finally matches the frequency of your Creator. And that's where freedom isn't fought for. It's restored. Because the soul, like any divine instrument, can fall out of tune. Trauma detunes it, fear muffles it. Sin corrupts its harmony. But there's a sound, the resonance of Christ's blood, that retunes the whole being, not metaphorically, spiritually, legally. When a believer stands in that sound, every counterfeit frequency collapses, every false code scrambles, every demonic blueprint loses synchronization. And what's left is the original note of creation. The one that said, "Let there be light." See, restoration isn't about going back. It's about remembering forward, stepping into what was always meant to be. When your soul aligns again, the old architecture falls silent. The counterfeit system dies of starvation, because it only ever fed on agreement. That's the secret. Hell doesn't want you to know. You were never truly broken, just out of tune. And when heaven sings over you again, everything that doesn't belong can't stay in harmony. That's not poetry, that's law. You are heaven's technology. And the designer never loses his code. So maybe the real deliverance isn't casting something out, but welcoming something back. Your sound, your rhythm, your design. Because when your frequency aligns again with heaven's, darkness no longer recognizes you. You can't find your signal. You can't read your code. That's how God hides his children. Not in caves or shadows, but in resonance, in truth, in alignment, in him. Because the moment the soul remembers its original sound, hell always notices. There's a moment after the war and the mind ends, where all that's left is peace that doesn't make sense. Not silence out of emptiness, but silence that hums with presence. If you've come this far in the series, maybe something inside you recognized that sound. Maybe your soul remembered what the world tried to erase. Because this, what you just heard, wasn't information. It was invitation. The architect's code is waking in you. And every time you choose truth over fear, light over reaction, and faith over noise, you're realigning your entire frequency to heaven's blueprint. This isn't the end of a video, it's the start of a recalibration. You're not watching this by accident. You were summoned here to remember who you are. And when you do, hell loses signal. If this message spoke to you, share it. Not for numbers, but for resonance. Because every soul that remembers adds another light to the grid. In the next episode, we go deeper into what heaven calls the fracture, where the war for divine design begins, where the counterfeit frequencies learn to disguise themselves as truth. Until then, stay aligned, stay awake, stay in the sound that calls you home.